Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome to this special coverage for the visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the United Arab Emirates. President al-Sisi arrived on Wednesday in the capital of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. Presidential spokesperson Ambassador Bassem Radi said that President Sisi's visit to the United Arab Emirates comes as part of the close and long-standing ties and cooperation binding Egypt and the United Arab Emirates at all levels. The President is scheduled to discuss means of boosting bilateral ties with Abu Dhabi Crown Prince and the Deputy Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The two sides will also tackle the latest regional developments, especially that the current phase requires concrete efforts in order to safeguard national security and confront attempts to undermine stability in the Arab countries. Our dear viewers will be shedding light on that very important visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the United Arab Emirates. But first, we'll take this short break and we'll be back. So stay tuned. Very important visit indeed by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the United Arab Emirates capital Abu Dhabi. To shed light on that very important visit by the President, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Hassan Wagih, our Professor of Political Science. Good afternoon to you, Professor Wagih.
Good afternoon to you.
Sir, President Sisi is visiting the United Arab Emirates to meet with Abu Dhabi Crown Prince. The visit comes in the wake of the attacks on the American base in the United Arab Emirates by the terrorist Houthi militias. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Wagih?
Actually, it is an extremely important visit to show that President Sisi and the Egyptian leadership considered very much, cherished very much highly the Arab relations, especially with the United Arab Emirates and with all Arab countries actually.
Yeah.
So it is very important because the President, the Egyptian leadership has been fighting terrorism, and of course we have all the sympathy and all the cooperation with brothers in Arab Emirates because this is a very unfair, unjustified terrorist act that should be confronted. And I think this in the wake of the visit of the President of Algeria to Egypt also, which were also intended to help all Arab countries to set up the Arab system through the summit. But before the summit, we have to cooperate very quickly to confront such a terrorist attack.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Wagih, what would be the highlight here of the bilateral talks with Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan?
Actually, the agenda is very multidimensional, always with our brothers in Arab Emirates. Also, this kind of talks would witness also the participation of the Emir of Bahrain and Prince of Bahrain, and also some other political figures. So I think when it comes to the critical context is the attack, the terrorist attack, but there is a continued agenda for investment, for cooperation in all directions.
Yes. Actually, the visit by the President aims to discuss unified Arab action towards the continued Houthi attacks on the Gulf countries, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. What's your take on that, Dr. Wagih?
Actually, it is very important, as I've heard from the news, that there is a consensus to de-escalate, not to escalate, which is very important for giving a chance to solve peacefully and through complex diplomacy.
Yes.
And I think the complex diplomacy requires us all in the Arab world to go out and seek international help, because there are so many mandates and so many resolutions were taken to call on the Houthi group to be democratic, not to have hegemony. And I think Yemen needs stability too, and we care about Yemen too, to have stability and to have a democratized country which all people share their faith in that brotherly country too.
And sir, now also we have this news where there were quartet discussions taking place in the United Arab Emirates, a joint Arab conversation, discussion over the regional issues, which of course took place with the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. How do you see this meetings and the tried to unified Arab action against the attacks of the Houthis? What here unified action could be taken?
Actually, Arab action, unified Arab action is unified, is justified actually all the time. It is a continuous agenda for all of us to work on. But in this particular situation, there is escalation and unjustified escalation through this terrorist act against Arab Emirates. And I think we have to take some kind of measures as unified Arab action regarding this terrorist act, because it is very dangerous and very threatening to the entire region.
Yes, sir. And finally, how do you follow the U.S. Western reaction toward the latest attacks that are a flagrant violation of the international law?
Actually, yes, this is a very important question, because the international community should have a role in getting its impact on the behavior of the Houthi. If this is a terrorist act, we should consider them as a terrorist group. But again, this is very connected with some, I don't know, some hidden agendas, which really make transactions on the account of the peoples of the area, whether it is in Vienna with the talk over there or in other kind of context. But again, we have to confront that situation on the international level through all the powers.
Yes. Now there is a quartet meeting between President Sisi, the leaders of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. How do you see the significance of that move and that meeting, that Arab meeting, in order to face these very important repercussions of the attacks by the Houthis and much more taking place on the ground?
Actually, the participation of the Bahraini prince is very important. because it is a Gulf security issue.
Yes.
So all Gulf countries are sympathizing with what's happening with Arab Emirates. And when Al-Houthi is shooting towards Arab Emirates, it has been shooting against Saudi Arabia as well. And it could be expanded somewhere else. So there should be a decisive measures to put a stop on that.
And sir, how do you follow up also the action by the international community? And if the Houthi are labeled a terrorist organization, what this mean in the fight against them? And why there are some Western countries still hesitant to take that move of considering the Houthi terrorist organization?
I think this should be referred to the issue of having strong Arab unified action and much more cooperation. Why? Because as we have seen the war on terror, which was conducted by many powers all over the world.
Yes.
But there are some leakage, some problems with this kind of action. You can see some contradictions. And again, this is a similar situation where the international community is governed by narrow-minded agendas and contrasting agendas sometimes. And this should not be the case, by the way, when it comes to international law.
Sir, how now the Arabs could take a common front in order to face the current challenges facing the Arab world?
Actually, the quick move on the part of the Egyptian president is very telling about the importance of the need to have this quick reaction. Even it should be before any Arab summit.
Yes.
Arab summit is very important, of course, to restore so many things and to restore stability to the entire Arab system. But again, what is needed, and we have seen that the president was so quick to go there to seek solutions and to stand firm against terrorism.
Yes. Actually, Egypt has long been reiterating that the Gulf security is an integral part of Egypt's national security. Would you please elaborate on this, and how have we long supported our brothers in the Gulf states and nations, and the security which is part and parcel of our national security as well, Dr. Wagi?
Yes, of course, from the very start of this kind of conflicts, Egypt has exerted a great deal of efforts in all domains.
Yes.
But as you have seen, and the whole world has seen, that Egypt is keen to deploy very complex diplomacy. You know, when it comes to the Ethiopian dam, when it comes to other thorny and critical security crises, Egypt has exerted a great deal of patience and a great deal of containment and a great deal of trying to de-escalate all the time, not to escalate and to go in a crisis that would have what we call crisis light. We don't want that to happen for the sake of everyone and for the sake of the Arab people at large.
Yes, sir. Also, President Sisi had earlier mentioned in one of the World Youth Forum sessions that Egypt is ready to help in solving the Yemeni crisis. How can we help, and what cards do Cairo have in order to help in solving this very important and critical crisis, Dr. Wagi?
Actually, this has to be done through extensive shuttle diplomacy between the people who really cause this kind of terrorist act and to convince them that this will never be for their sake, and to go also in the Arab Gulf countries.
Yes.
And of course it has to have a try solution by going to the international community as well.
Yes. Sir, finally, what are your expectations here for today's talks in Abu Dhabi? And we are expecting the leaders to announce a course of actions to fight terrorism.
Yes, my expectation is that there should be, not everything to be said on a national or an international television, of course. But it's very important that the parties will get together and cooperate closely and to seek the solution they find feasible to each party.
Indeed. Dr. Hassan Wagih, Professor of Political Science, always a pleasure to listen to your precious input. Thank you very much for being with us, sir, today in our special coverage where President Sisi arrived earlier today in the capital of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. The presidential spokesman said that the president's visit to the UAE comes as part of the close and long-standing ties and cooperation binding Egypt and the United Arab Emirates at all levels. Well, our dear viewers, with that we come to the end of our special coverage for now. I'm Mahisty Rabia signing off.